Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and you're listening to the Forbes Books Podcast. And you've probably seen or heard people talk about the entrepreneurial failure rate. It's sometimes wildly over-exaggerated and other times severely underestimated. According to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 70% of small businesses fail in their first 10 years. But what if I told you that it's okay to like failure? Even love it? My guest this week is Olakunle Soriyan, also known as PK, and he has co-written with Dr. Akintoye Akindele the best-selling book, A Love Affair with Failure. He's here to talk about the difference between failing and failure and why they're on a mission to empower 1 million entrepreneurs across Africa over the next decade. PK, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you so much. It's a blessing to be here.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time. And so, I want to start with the book, A Love Affair with Failure. You don't see a lot of people embrace the word failure when it comes to putting a book out there. I'm trying to think if there was any that had that. Why was it important to make that a part of the book and the mission that you and Akindele are part of?
Because, the word failure has really scaled in the world, and there's just this collective fear and submission to the idea that failure is a limitation. Well, maybe that is true, but failure is also a noun, and nouns can be oppressive. We need verbs, failing, because the whole idea of failing is a constant, probably even existential for the human condition. So if it's sure, like death is sure, like we'll go to bed, like nutrition is sure, those are constants. How do we embrace constants except to see them as a part of what we have to, who we have to be and what we have to know, and to learn to respond more intelligently to it. So people try to sleep better, because if they don't learn to sleep better, they will sleep anyway. And if they sleep less and sleep unguardedly, it could kill them. Right? We are all going to die. So how do we respond to that? How do we manage that? How do we use the time that we have and make the best form of it? Right? The grave is an equality. There's no seniority in the grave. Everyone is going there. So in the same way, failing is a constant. And if that is true, what we need to accept is what is coming will come. It is who we are, how we hear, how we see, how we interpret, how we judge, decide, and take action that makes the difference. So welcoming all of that and accept that as a critical part of how you define your meaning and your strength, that will be the type of adventure capital that we have to embrace.
And this is such a specific mindset. So I'm curious how this collaboration with you and Dr. Akindele happened. Because one thing is for you to have this idea and go out and do it, but to have this shared sort of brain with the doctor, how did that happen?
So both of us are business partners, and we've done so many things for years. Part of what we've done is the commitment to help young people. And we've been providing mentoring for thousands of young people across the continent and beyond it. We've tried to offer a platform of hope and strength. We call ourselves Hope Merchants. The goal is just to help people everywhere to see the necessity of showing up at their highest level of power and to use all of that power to model decency, progress for those coming after. The truth is, if you go to a hospital to donate your blood, part of the responsibility of the hospital is to test for capacity, that you are well. So it is the person that is well that can really donate blood, right? Mm-hmm. You have to be well, regardless of the sincerity or veracity of your commitment to donate your blood, right? That wellness is capacity. And that is true in business, in anything. You have to demonstrate capacity for whatever it is that you have to do. So for years, we've tried to help young people across the globe, particularly in the continent of Africa, to see the why for developing capacity through enterprise, innovation, and articulating their ideas intelligently and showing up socially, showing up with a lot of strength in the corporate space. And we began to look at the challenges that we were experiencing and the feedback we were getting from the young people, and the fact that failure and the fear of failure continue to be a major conversation that we have to address consistently. That in our lives, We've had to struggle ourselves. I've been through so much. I mean, as a human being, I grew up in a home that is pretty much in practice of polygamy. That means that there are two wives in the house, in the same home. And that was tough for me as a young kid. I've been in a boarding house since the age of 3. That is, and I'm navigating my elementary years. And then I've had to make mistakes of judgment. I mean, I spent 12 years in college trying to get a degree.
Wow.
I mean, and I was just failing, right? And if you spent 12 years in college, you should have a bachelor's degree, you should have 2 master's degree, and you should have a doctorate degree with that.
Right.
At the end of 12 years, if you have a PhD and you have 2 master's degree and then you have a bachelor's degree, it makes sense. But at the end of 12 years, I managed to come out with a bachelor's degree.
All right.
And it was so embarrassing, right?
Well,
so,
no,
hold
on. But wait a minute, PK. I mean, 12 years, it's a struggle, and the struggle was real for you. And the fact that you finally did walk away with a degree, I mean, it's going back to our failure conversation. Even though you felt like you were a failure because it took you so long, didn't you feel some sort of, I guess, sense of hope or inspiration because you finally were able to get that degree?
Yes, I found incredible strength in just showing up every day. I have to confess that at times I woke up completely clueless and completely afraid, and I wondered if this really was going to end. Like, is this just going to be my journey? I mean, year after year, working hard to graduate, having so many courses to pass, and just, struggling in there, but somewhere inside of me, I knew that everything in life is a phase. And Joe, when I go to bed and I wake up in the morning, whatever it is that I went to bed with, no matter how dark the night was, the assurance that it's going to be morning, something just kept letting me know it will be morning for me someday, somehow. In my darkest, experiences, it will be light someday. And I just stuck in there. A lot of times it's not really that I have some strategic, understanding of how I was going to navigate, but just the idea that I have to keep moving. Giving up and accepting that this retrogression will be my residual experience and my permanent state was impossible for me. I really believe in possibilities, and I found hope somehow within myself, because when I was growing up in Africa, I didn't have we didn't have anything called motivational speakers, or we didn't have success seminars anywhere. We didn't even have the concept of mentoring was really absent in my generation way back. Having seen 10 years, 5 times, with some extras, we didn't have anybody talking to you about mentoring. So it was really you traveling a path without signpost and just believing in that possibility that somehow you will navigate. I call it today adventure capital. The idea that if you stay true to your experiences and decide the kind of person you will be while they prevail, the truth is, whether you like it or not, everything in life is built with expiry. There's nothing in the human condition, even the human being will die at some point. There's no experience in the human life that is not built with expiry. So everything will phase out. Everything is in a phase of strength, is in a season of usefulness, whether good or bad. Everything in the human experience is in a season of usefulness. It will expire. Now, if I greet that with enough hope and strength and discipline and continue to make the right decision, because I say to people every time, how do you mess up your life? You have to take wrong decisions to mess up your life. When it's time to fix your life, how do you fix it? You have to take new, fresh, right decisions again. It comes down to decision. And every decision you take, right, once you take it right, you build a new past. And many decisions, therefore, will create new past for you. And you are building a different history and a different legacy automatically. If you stay true to that, you will have to endure the weight of time. But this is what I say to people. Patience is a force that ensures that truth or deception reveal itself. And so if you are patient with yourself and continue to trust the process, it's just a matter of time. Everything positive in that experience will emerge on the scene. And then you have the opportunity to Show that to the whole world. And then those who doubted you will begin to doubt their doubts and begin to take a second look at the value that you represent. And that's just the way it is. Each day comes, you greet it with enough hope and determination and patience. And then you realize all of a sudden you are only time, discipline away from the outcomes that you prefer.
And, PK, we're all in this together. So I'm curious, during that 12-year struggle, were family and friends saying to you, "Hey, PK, what are you doing? Will you stop that? Like, you'll find something else to do"? Did you have sort of like those voices chirping behind you, be like, "PK, come on, give it up, give it up"? Like, how did you? So you have these internal struggles, but you also have these external struggles coming from your inner circle, even sometimes your outer circle. So how did you deal with that?
And those external ones are even louder and stronger. And what they do is they weaponize the inner struggle you already have. Is really like double jeopardy. You're already suffering inside of you alone without anybody contributing to that. And then with the naysayers and the honest and sincere, my mom used to call me Methuselah. Methuselah is a character in the Bible who lived longest in history, right?
Yeah.
And she used to say, it seems you are going to live in school forever. I mean, you're never going to graduate. I mean, my younger ones, everyone graduated before me. In the neighborhood where I grew up, I became like a proverb. Parents use me as an example to talk and advise their children and admonish their children. They say stuff like, "Do you want to be like this guy?" And it was tough emotionally. I'm seeing all of that. And people were so sure I was done. They were so sure I wasn't going to amount to anything. But I just kept moving. Today, I'm still a proverb in my neighborhood. But instead of "do you want to be like," it's now "don't you want to be like?" Don't you want to be like? The narrative has completely changed. They see me in the newspaper, they see me on TV, they see me in the biggest media platforms, and they're like, "Don't you want to be like this?" And all of a sudden, because they were there to see the reality of that progression and how impossibilities were converted to possibility through hope and resolve, is believable straight up in my community. So I represent today strength, hope, meaning, purpose to so many young people along that line. I have over 14,000 young people within my database. Myself and my partner, Dr. Akintoye Akindele, both of us have roved across Africa, offering guidance and philanthropy to so many people. Just the idea that we've been there, we've done that, we've seen the worst of this, we are still seeing it. Like I tell people, I've failed, I'm failing, I'm going to continue to fail, right? Because the human being that can supply perfect behavior has never been born, right? At your best, on your best day, you are still human and you are still imperfect. And you are subject to errors of judgment, errors of interpretation. So how do you deal with that? But to accept it. So I tell people, I'm not living my life sorry. I've accepted the reality of my frailty as a human being. What I can do, right, is to learn to block that with fresh and right decisions. So I tell people that whether you like it or not, there's no such thing as somebody who takes a decision that is foolish every time. When you call somebody foolish, it's not that he doesn't take wise decisions. It's that he takes more foolish decisions than wise decisions. So he has a reputation for taking foolish decisions. So they say he's foolish. Even though he acts wise occasionally, he acts foolish most of the time. When we say somebody is wise as well, it's not that the guy or the lady doesn't act foolishly. It's that he has a reputation for acting wise, because most of the time it takes more wise decisions, but he acts foolishly occasionally as well. So when you have total notable failing behavior, the outcome is your experience. Every time you have total notable wise actions and behavior over total notable foolish actions and behavior, the outcome is what they call your experience. It's what they define as your reputation and who you are. So your focus really is not to try to avoid the foolish acts, because that is a constant. The real strength is to celebrate the wise, intelligent actions that you can take, and camping around that and deliberately, walking around that is the difference in people, right? That is just the way it is.
I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but why has Africa become sort of the last untapped continent for entrepreneurship and innovation? Because you're seeing what's happening in India and Asia, and Europe, South America, obviously North America. Why do you think it's taken so long to really squeeze that juice out of Africa to bring more talented and innovative people to the forefront?
So part of the legacy of colonialism is the idea that Westernization must recommend the most supreme ideas for how we interpret our reality in Africa. So part of what we've been told so many times is that government and politicians are the hope of the people, which is not true. So part of what we are doing in our town hall meetings and in our success seminars and conferences across the continent is really letting people know that at the end of the day, entrepreneurs, innovators, and nonprofits are by far more important than politicians and political parties. To stop looking to government as the hope of the country. So you look at America. There's a documentary on the men who built America. They didn't say the politicians who built it, or the political party that built it, or the government that built it. It's the men who built it. So at the end of the day, it comes down to the creative juice that is resident in every human being, and to accept that a lot of the problems we see every day has to transcend the limits of welfare economics, and it also has to transcend the limits of defining problems or challenges. We have to stop seeing these things as barriers and see them as human issues that requires intelligent response through enterprise and innovation, right? So convincing people to look to enterprise and to begin to articulate their power and their meaning from there is the only hope for compelling the government to humble itself and legislate intelligently in favor of entrepreneurs. So the story of America is really about the private sector thinking at a level, accepting responsibility for human problems in the society, converting those problems into products and services and solution blueprints that can work for society and unlock gratitude in society, and then forcing the government to really legislate and negotiate in that direction that works for everyone. As long as all eyes are on the government, we miss the responsibility that has to come from the private sector. It is the innovation of the private sector and the cooperation of the government that really create the miracle for nation building. The equation in Africa is we have compartmentalized all of that to look to government alone. What we are doing is now forcing people and helping people to see the power that they have, to know that powerlessness is really a state of the mind. Helplessness is really a state of the mind. And to imagine that your highest peace and your greatest meaning will be away from you, but in the hand of a third party that you are not sure cares about you, that is weakness. To know that at the end of the day, your hand, your brain under God are your greatest assets. And if you choose to take responsibility at that level and organize like-minded people like you at that level, we will create magic. And it's working. Young people are now realizing that a phone in their hand with data is incredible power. And we are embracing borderlessness. We are learning that an idea in Lagos can be consumed in New York, can be consumed anywhere in the world. And we can attract purchasing power from New York or from Dallas or from London or from Paris all the way to Lagos or in Abuja or Accra or Conakry. That is how we are thinking. And it's working. It's slow, but it's sure.
And that's sort of what you're doing as CEO of Africa House, right? That's basically what your day job is, doing all that.
Yes.
And talk to me about Africa House being located in Texas. Because I'm fascinated by this, because it's like, I know Dr. Akindele is over in Lagos, but you spend most of your time down in Texas. So talk to me about the Africa House being there. What kind of work you're doing there? Yeah.
First of all, the weather condition in Texas is so similar to that of Lagos.
Oh, okay. So you're prepared. Okay.
So that is key. But also the idea that we have quite a large African population in Texas. If you look at the number of Africans in Houston, in Dallas, in Houston, we have quite a lot of Africans there. We also have Africans in other parts of United States, Chicago, Atlanta, New York, Maryland. You have a lot of Africans there. But Texas for us was a beginning, and we have a huge concentration of upwardly mobile Africans there. But the bigger goal really is to create a platform where investors from anywhere in the world can connect with entrepreneurs and innovators of African descent, and people of African descent anywhere, including minorities, Latino, women from anywhere, whether they are white, black, is irrelevant. The goal is that if we begin to pay attention to the most vulnerable amongst us and begin to cherish the ideas that are resident in them, God-given within them, we can create another form of equality that works for all. Now, we're not thinking about government or politicians. We're just trying to create a platform where an idea anywhere can find a new thread that it needs to express itself. And take a look at this. Every year in Africa, you have people in the diaspora sending money home, otherwise called remittances. And we have for fact that every year over $40 billion moves from America, London, Canada, and from the host countries that have Africans as guests back home. So every year, $40 billion we go home. But you see, 99.9% of that money is going into welfare economics. It's going into rent or food or school fees and stuff like that. Not really into development. Now, we know that any African sending any money home is sending less than 5% of his income in his host country, right? So what if you encourage the guy to send an extra 10%, an extra 15%? We're not asking him to repatriate all the money he makes in his host country. He should be grateful for being accepted into his host country. He can keep 80% of his income there. We're saying take an extra 10% intentionally and then send it home. That means we can build another $120 billion going into the continent every year. Now, this is the idea. This $120 billion will not be going into the continent for welfare economics. It will be going for people to feed, or for people to be able to sleep well or come out or wear clothes and all of that. But now into development. So we can have incubators everywhere, right? So part of what Africa House is doing is also encouraging incubators and accelerators and enterprise hubs across the continent, and just allowing them to see a new type of support and funding from their own type of people, right? In the United States, in Canada, in London, anywhere. And then they can connect to the ideas that are back home, the local ideas back home, and then forcing them to begin to consider that they can also pass the test of universality above the test of locality. So it is easy to know that Microsoft is not successful just because its idea is working in America. Is because the ideas are working in the world. How do one person create a local idea and brand it and process it in such a way that the whole world, people of diverse cultures and diverse language, can invest in that idea? That is true strength. And what we are trying to say to young people back home is create ideas, not just the ideas that pass the test of locality and function within the limits of your geography, but ideas that can connect to the whole world, such that people of diverse cultures, diverse languages, diverse interests can see that it's not just Americans who use Windows, it's not just Americans who buy iPhones, it's not just Japanese people who buy Honda or who buy Toyota, right? It's not just Koreans who buy Samsung. People everywhere buy that. So how do we create ideas within the continent that the world can invest in, that the world can see as part of their own reality and part of their own culture? And then with that initiative, we can have a resonance that really works for per capita, GNI per capita figures across the continent, that really impact on GDP across different nations within the continent. If entrepreneurs within that space begin to see their ideas as something with a possibility for global strength, for universal acceptance, you see?
Yeah, and in there you talked about language, and I want to bring this up because last year you did an interview where you said English language is overrated. And I'm sure it has a little bit to do with what you were just talking about. So talk to me about that. Why is English language overrated?
So part of that is that, so we were colonized by the British, and we inherited the English language from the British system. And part of the assumption was we are a country of over 200 dialects and people. We are actually so many nations brought together as one, right? The construct called Nigeria will never have a Nigerian like you have a French person, will never have a Nigerian that like you have a German or you have a British. So we are a fusion of different tongues and different languages and different cultures and different assumptions that have been brought together into the construct called Nigeria. So the custodians of the power at the time, in partnership with the British government, felt that we have to create a lingua franca, some language that really comforts everyone and everyone can speak, except that that language will not be my language. And now that language is going to become a determinant of progress for a fault that is not mine. I'm not a natural British. I'm an African. I'm from Remo, somewhere in the western part of Nigeria. I have what is natural to me. So how do I compete with a British citizen who speaks English naturally, and I have to first of all deassociate myself from what is natural to me and accept what is not natural to me as the standard of my progress? Now, when you expand that and you consider that the most prosperous nations in the world speak their language pretty much. The Germans speak German, the French speak French, the British speak English, the Chinese speak Mandarin, right? The Americans speak, their English, right? When you look at that, one or two languages really work, but you see that the poorest countries in the world are the ones enduring the fact of a lingua franca. So the subjects of development will be maths, physics, chemistry, biology in elementary or middle school. So you learn those subjects. Those subjects really make everything. Maths, physics, chemistry, biology made the microphone, made everything, right? Every other subject is trying to market what they make or distribute it or protect it, like law and stuff like that. But the most powerful countries learn those four subjects in the language that is natural to them. So I don't have a problem with English language in Africa or French in Africa or Portuguese in Africa. I think 60 years of independence, so-called independence, and working with those languages is long enough for us to accept them as probably part of our reality, but that they should be a determinant of progress, such that if I'm not able to speak the language well, then I will not qualify for acceptance. So if, for example, somebody says, where are you going? And I say, go to Lagos. Now, the ideal English, the ideal grammar, the right grammar is to say, I am going to Lagos, or I am going to New York, or I am going to Germany. That is the right English. Okay. But if I say, I'm go to Germany, you get me. You get me, I've communicated. The goal of lingua franca should not be sophistication. It should be communication. And it doesn't matter how I struggle with the language, as long as I communicate and you get me, it should be fine. A perfect example is you go to the soccer teams in the world, the biggest soccer teams in the world, from Manchester United to Chelsea to Barcelona to AC Milan. The biggest soccer teams in the world are coached by people who don't speak good English. In the Premier League in England, the best coaches don't speak good English. They speak, whether you call it Jose Mourinho, or you call it Guardiola, or you call it Pep, or, these guys don't speak good English. But they win the league, they win the Champions League, they coach English players to do all of that. Because at the end of the day, mastery of another man's language is not a determinant of progress. So if I can speak like a British person, I am judged without considering the strength of my character, the uniqueness of my intelligence, the reality of my own experiences. All of that is jeopardized, and I have to accept a universal standard of another man's language. It's not working. So for so many ways, and I've spent articles, I've done interviews on different TV channels articulating the idea that we have to reduce the power of English language as a determinant of progress. I'm not saying we shouldn't speak it, but it shouldn't determine how I get a job. So that no matter how intelligent I am, if I cannot speak the technicalities of a language, I'm not going to get a job. It means that if I sit in a room and I write an exam. So a young man came to me, Joe, this is very sad and heartbreaking. A young man came to me and came to raise money to buy a new engine for his car so that he could continue a taxi business that he was starting back home in Lagos. And I'm like, wow, I know you when you were much younger. You were smart. What happened to you? Why didn't you go to school? Why didn't you go to college? He said, well, I tried to go to college, but I couldn't pass English language. right? I said, so what did you pass? I passed a subject called commerce. I passed a subject called economics. I passed a subject called government, but I didn't pass English language. And I needed English language to study law with another subject. I said, so I don't understand. What language did you use to pass the economics that you pass, the commerce that you pass, the government subject that you pass? You passed those subjects, right? He said, yes. What language did you use to pass that? He said, English language. Wow. So you used English language to pass 3 other subjects. Wow. And you couldn't pass the English language itself. So there's a big question there. The question is, so what is the goal of lingua franca? Because it means that no matter how well I can speak, no matter how well I can write, if I cannot tell the difference between a pronoun and an adjective, or I can't tell the difference between a clause and a phrase, I will not pass the subject called English. So what is the goal of English language, of lingua franca? Is it sophistication or communication? Because if it is sophistication, then I should not pass. But if it's communication, our boy has communicated well enough to use that language to pass 3 other subjects. And the language he used to pass 3 other subjects, he couldn't pass it. So that raises a different question altogether. This language is, I can't even marry the girl of my dreams. Instead of saying church, if I say shush, which some people will say because of the defect of nature, so to say, if there's anything like that. But it's not their fault that they say shush. He wants to say church, but he can't do it because the tongue doesn't allow him to do that. So he's going to say shush. And once he says shush, the elites are going to reject him as this guy is not competent in English language. So the father of his girlfriend will reject him because they feel he can speak English. When he goes to apply for a job, his intelligence will be ignored. His strength of character will be ignored. His strength of decency will be ignored. His sense of mission, his sense of thoroughness will all be ignored as long as he fails the test of the technicality of English language. He cannot progress by any means except he's able to qualify to pass that. I don't think that's fair. Now we know again, Joe, that first in class is not first in life, right? We now know. We now see Bill Gates. We now see so many great guys who did not fulfill the requirement for academics, but passed the test of education. Because at the end of the day, academics is what you are taught. Education is what you teach yourself. And education is the ability of the human spirit to do 4 things. Number 1, to experience his world. Number 2, to question that experience deeply enough to find the options that exist in those experiences, and then to know which of those experiences, options to embrace as a matter of supreme importance and urgency. That is education. Sure. And at that level, even at a PhD, you may not be educated. Why? Because you don't know how to experience your world. If you can do that, you don't know how to question your world. If you know how to question it, you cannot birth options from what you are questioning. Because at the end of the day, the difference between the lion in the jungle and the human being in the city is his ability to birth newness, to generate novel scenarios, to create options, right? The lion has not shaved today, not because shaving is not possible, just because he cannot self-question. If the lion could ask himself, why do I have a lot of beards? He could shave tomorrow, but he can't do that, right? It's only a human being that can do that. That is education. And when you have all of the school that you've attended and you have all of the degrees, and don't get me wrong, I've gone to school, I have a degree, but what I've learned in all of that is academics can be a form of conditioning in itself, except you have a very humble and creative rebellion inside of you that compartmentalize everything you are learning and put everything in perspective such that you know the difference between what you need to serve your unique journey on the face of the earth as a human being, and you know the things that you don't need that you are being taught. Because every curriculum is designed by a human being with a goal and an agenda and an interest. So the more academically qualified you are, the more of other people's understanding you've learned. The truth is, somebody said, I certify people. I said, that's fine. You are the person certifying everybody. But the question for you is, who certified you? To certify everyone. So the first person that certified people, who certified him? So what that tells us is that knowledge doesn't have to be received horizontally from man to man. There is a higher experience in receiving knowledge that transcends the horizontal way, which is vertical. So you can learn 0 to 1. It doesn't have to be 1 to infinity. You can learn 0 to 1. You can create something from nothing. It doesn't have to be that 1 must exist to multiply 1 into 2 or 3 or 4. So that is the thing we are teaching people. And that is the type of commitment that we are accepting, to know that everything in life is beautiful and awesome, but not everything in life is designed for you. That opportunities will always exist for every human being, but not all opportunities are your opportunities. Now, the intelligence and the character to know the difference, that is what I think defines meaning and purpose for every one of us.
And on the subject of education, there's 1 billion people in Africa, and I know that you and Dr. Akindele are on a mission to empower 1 million entrepreneurs across the African continent by 2030. How is that? How is that mission coming along?
It's coming along very well. We have a program called the Zero to Hero Seminars for years, where we've been mentoring and teaching young people to go into enterprise. We've helped people to see 6 figures. We've helped countless to see that. But part of what we are trying to do is not just to make people successful. We are not just raising 1 million entrepreneurs. We are raising 1 million entrepreneurs who understand personal social responsibility beyond corporate social responsibility. I think CSR is easy when each of us understand PSR. So we are not raising entrepreneurs to just have money. We are raising them to understand that somebody helped you and somebody gave you a chance, and that at the height of your success, it must unlock gratitude in society. And when you succeed in such a way that society cannot be grateful for what you are doing and for what you are creating, then you are another oppressor with all the tools and all the machinery to multiply pain and stress in the world, right? So we are raising people that are conscious, who understand that they've been blessed to bless, they've been assisted to assist, they've been taught to teach, they've been comforted so that they can be comforting and offering comforting experiences for within their areas of influence. That is what we are trying to do, and pushing people to the limits of that, to know that success without morality, without decency, without good, without understanding the pain and the struggles in society is just another popular idea to perpetuate the suffering of the collective. That's how we see it. Again, we are not just raising 1 million entrepreneurs, Joe. We are also impacting 80 million people across the globe who can believe in this type of thinking and shape culture with it, alter the course of history totally, just by accepting that somebody has to be strong, that many will be weak, but somebody has to be strong, and that somebody must take responsibility for being the comfort zone and the inspiration point and the succor point for the majority to lean on, and the most vulnerable and the most exposed amongst us can lean on. We won't be the first to start that. That's something out there. People are committed to doing good and giving back across the world. It's something that is more popular in Europe and America, parts of Asia, and it's available in Africa, but we're not trying to scale it because we are very communal in Africa. So you don't have somebody successful and not take responsibility for a little village. So there's nothing like that. In America, you could have someone, once he's 18, he thinks about himself, and his parents give him some level of independence and how he must take responsibility for himself. In Africa, it's not like that. At every point in time, you are aware of your community. You have people around you have to be responsible for. You will call people brothers who are not from your nuclear family. They are not from your dad or from your mom. They are just living in your neighborhood. They grew up in your village, and automatically they become your brothers and your sisters. Now, being able to do that structurally and being able to do that systemically, to scale that and make that go viral, where more people are seeing the need for that, and then we are able to systemically reach more people beyond our little villages, right? That is what we are also trying to teach. 80 million of them across the world will make a lot of difference.
PK, it's been a fantastic conversation, and I'm glad that you stuck with college for 12 years. Because who knows, we probably would never had this conversation if you didn't stick it out.
We would never have had it, I'm sure.
Well, thank you, PK. God bless.
Thank you, Joe. It's been a privilege to be here. Thank you so much.
He is Olakunle Soriyan AKA PK, and he is the co-author of the best-selling book A Love Affair with Failure with Dr. Akintoye Akindele. And you can pick that up wherever books are sold. So that's it for another episode of the Forbes Books Podcast. If you enjoy the show, make sure you take a second to subscribe so you automatically get new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I'd love if you left us a review so more amazing entrepreneurs like yourself can discover the show. And please don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.